Have you ever been in a situation where you felt like you could just sense someone's true feelings, even when their words were saying something totally different?
Oh, yeah, definitely.
Like maybe you're on a date and they're saying they're having a good time, but their feet are already pointed toward the exit?
Yeah, yeah, I've totally been there.
Well, get ready to unlock a whole new level of understanding human behavior. Because today we're deep diving into the world of nonverbal communication,
Such a fascinating topic.
based on the insights from what everybody is saying.
Oh, a classic.
Okay, so let's jump right in. Our source material dives into this concept of the limbic brain. What exactly is that?
Well, the limbic brain, you can think of it as our emotional control center.
Okay.
It's the part of our brain that reacts instinctively to the world around us, and it's where our fight or flight response comes from.
So it's like our primal brain.
Exactly. And what's interesting is that the limbic brain doesn't really have a filter.
Oh, that's interesting.
It reacts honestly and immediately, often bypassing our conscious attempts to, control our expressions.
So it's like our bodies are giving away our true feelings, even when we're trying to put on a poker face.
Exactly. And that's why nonverbal communication can be so revealing. If you know what to look for, you can start to decode those hidden messages that people are sending.
That's making me rethink how I approach conversations. Now, the book talks about these three primary responses to stress: freeze, flight, and fight. Can you give us a breakdown of each of those and some real-world examples of how they might show up?
Sure. So these are our limbic brain's hardwired responses to any perceived threat.
Okay.
It's our ancient survival instincts kicking in, preparing us to either confront danger or avoid it.
So like when you walk into a room full of people and you suddenly forget everyone's name,
Yeah.
like that sudden freeze?
That's a perfect example. Your limbic system is hitting that freeze button. It's not always as dramatic as completely freezing in place, though.
Right.
Think of a shoplifter trying to blend in by hunching over, or a nervous interviewee locking their feet under the chair. Those are all subtle forms of freezing designed to make us less visible.
Interesting. So what about flight? Is that always like literally running away?
No, not necessarily. It's more about creating distance or finding an escape route.
Okay.
So like turning your torso away from someone you find intimidating, or maybe using objects to create a barrier between you.
I see.
Even subtly angling your feet towards the exit. These are all flight responses in action.
So if I'm on a date and their feet are pointed towards the door, maybe it's time to wrap things up.
Yeah, it could be a sign they're not fully engaged or that they're feeling uncomfortable for some reason. Now, fight is the most assertive of the three responses. It's about defending ourselves or our territory.
Okay.
Think about the classic chest-puffing display of a silverback gorilla,
Right.
or even how someone might splay their arms wide on a table during an argument.
Wow, I never realized those subtle postures could be so loaded.
Yeah.
The book also talks about pacifying behaviors. What are those all about?
Pacifying behaviors are our body's way of calming ourselves down in stressful situations.
Okay.
It's like our inner voice is saying, hey, we need to chill out. And then our hands go to like touch our neck or rub our forehead or play with our hair.
It's like when you see someone nervously rubbing their neck during a presentation.
Exactly. And the higher the stress, the more pronounced those pacifying behaviors become.
Makes sense.
The book actually shares this really gripping anecdote about a woman who unconsciously revealed that her son was hiding in the house
What?
by repeatedly touching her neck while talking to investigators.
Wow, okay. That's a little creepy, but also incredibly insightful. So we've got the limbic brain driving these instinctive reactions and these three Fs that come into play when we're under stress. What's fascinating is that we often do these things without even realizing it.
Absolutely. And that's what makes nonverbal communication such a powerful tool for understanding what's really going on beneath the surface. It's like having access to a secret language that reveals people's true thoughts and feelings.
So how can we start to decode this secret language? Are there certain parts of the body we should pay more attention to?
Yeah, definitely. The book highlights the importance of the legs and feet because they're often considered the most honest part of the body. They're like a step ahead of our conscious mind, revealing those raw, unfiltered emotions.
Okay, so tell me, why are the feet and legs such truth tellers?
It's simple, really. We're just less aware of what our lower body is doing. While we might meticulously craft our facial expressions or what we're going to say,
Right.
our feet and legs often betray our true feelings, whether we realize it or not.
Interesting.
Take happy feet, for example.
Happy feet, what's that?
So imagine you're giving a presentation,
Okay.
and even though your audience has got poker faces, you see their feet start to wiggle or bounce with excitement.
Oh, I see.
That, my friend, is happy feet.
Okay.
A clear sign they're liking what they're hearing.
So even if they're trying to stay neutral, their feet are doing a little victory dance.
Precisely. On the other hand, shifting feet, especially when those feet are pointed away from you or towards an exit, can signal disinterest or a desire to escape the conversation.
Got it. So it's not always a good sign if someone's tapping their feet under the table.
Right.
It could mean they're bored.
Exactly. Context is key.
Yeah.
Now, in a romantic context, playful foot touches under the table or dangling a shoe off the foot
Okay.
can signal comfort and attraction. But beware, that same footsie from a colleague at a meeting
Yeah.
sends a very different message.
Definitely don't want to misinterpret those signals. Okay, so we've covered the honesty of the legs and feet. What about the hands and arms? What insights does the book offer about those?
Well, first off, it emphasizes how our brains are hardwired to notice hands.
Right.
They're essential to our survival, so it's no surprise that hand gestures are a powerful form of communication. They instantly grab our attention.
So that explains why those TED Talk speakers use such big, sweeping hand gestures.
Yeah, exactly. Expressive hand movements make us more persuasive because they project confidence and passion.
Conversely, hiding your hands or keeping them restrained makes you appear less trustworthy.
Interesting.
Like you're holding something back.
Makes sense. So if I'm going into a job interview, I should make sure my hands are visible.
Yeah.
And I should use them to emphasize my points.
Absolutely. Now, what about shaky hands? Do those always mean someone's nervous?
I would assume so, but maybe there's more to it.
Good instinct. While shaky hands can signal anxiety, they can also indicate excitement.
Okay.
It's all about context.
Yeah.
Are they also showing other signs of stress, like touching their neck or biting their lip?
Right.
If so, it's probably nerves. But if their eyes are sparkling and their tone is upbeat,
Yeah.
those shaky hands might just mean they're thrilled about the opportunity.
Okay, so it's like a detective game, putting all the clues together to get the full picture.
Precisely. Now, speaking of clues, there are certain hand gestures that can reveal a lot about a person's confidence level.
Right.
Take the steepling gesture, for instance. You mean like when someone presses their fingertips together, forming a little steeple shape with their hands?
Exactly. This gesture is a classic power move.
Okay.
Projecting authority and conviction. Think of CEOs, judges, even politicians using this to emphasize their points.
Interesting. It's like their hands are saying, I'm in control here.
Exactly. On the flip side, you have low confidences like hiding thumbs in pockets, fidgeting with jewelry, or interlacing fingers tightly.
So if I want to project confidence, I should avoid those self-soothing gestures.
Being aware of them is a great first step. Now, while the hands can reveal a lot, what about the face?
Right.
It's the most expressive part of the body, right?
It would seem so. But the book warns us that the face can also be the most misleading.
Exactly. It's the easiest to manipulate consciously.
Right.
So while it's tempting to try and read every raised eyebrow and furrowed brow,
Yeah.
we need to be cautious about jumping to conclusions.
So it's not as simple as smiling equals happy, frowning equals sad.
Not at all. There's a lot more nuance at play.
All right, so let's break down some of these facial cues. What should we be paying attention to?
Well, one of the most fascinating indicators is pupil dilation. Did you know our pupils actually widen when we see something we like?
Oh, wow.
And constrict when we encounter something we dislike.
Really? So even if I'm trying to hide my disgust, my pupils might give me away.
Precisely. The book tells this story of a spy whose pupils dilated when shown a photo of a known enemy.
Wow.
Even though he claimed not to recognize the person, his body betrayed him.
Okay, that's wild. So much for poker face.
Right. Now, the eyebrows can be pretty expressive, too. Think about genuine surprise. Your eyebrows shoot up, your eyes widen, but feigned interest.
Yeah.
The eyebrows might only raise slightly or not at all.
So if someone's telling me about their amazing vacation, but their eyebrows aren't really doing much, they might be faking their enthusiasm.
It's a possibility. Also, look for a decrease in those eyebrow flashes as the conversation goes on.
Okay.
That can signal waning interest or commitment.
This is fascinating. What about eye contact? Too much or too little? Does it mean anything?
Eye contact is complex as it can be influenced by cultural norms,
Right.
but generally prolonged eye contact signals intensity,
Okay.
which can be either positive or negative. It could be attraction, but it could also be aggression or dominance.
And what about avoiding eye contact? Is that always a sign of guilt or deception?
Not necessarily. It could also be shyness, discomfort, or a lack of confidence. Again, context is crucial. A child avoiding eye contact with an adult
Right.
might be a sign of fear or submission, not necessarily deception.
Right. Like if I'm getting chewed out by my boss, I might instinctively look down, Not because I'm lying, but because I'm trying to make myself smaller and less of a target.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Speaking of telling cues, let's move on to the lips.
Okay.
There's a lot we can learn from those, wouldn't you say?
Absolutely. Spill the tea on lip reading.
Well, pursing the lips is often a subtle sign of disagreement.
Right.
Like someone listening to a presentation and they purse their lips, they might have some doubts or objections they're not voicing.
So it's like a silent, I don't buy it.
Precisely. Then you have lip compression, which often indicates stress or anxiety. And in extreme cases, the lips might disappear altogether,
Wow.
as someone tries to suppress a strong emotion.
And biting the lip, that's a classic sign of anxiety, right?
Absolutely. And touching the mouth or licking the lips can also be pacifying behaviors,
Okay.
especially when someone's feeling anxious or uncertain.
Wow. The mouth is a chatterbox even when it's not speaking. Okay, before we move on from the face, what about the nose? Does that reveal anything?
You might be surprised to learn this, but yes.
Okay.
Nostril flaring, for example, can signal arousal or anticipation.
Interesting.
You might see it in athletes before a big game,
Uh-huh.
or even during moments of attraction between people.
Interesting. It's like our bodies are prepping for action.
Exactly. Then you have the classic nose wrinkle, that universal sign of disgust.
So if someone's nose wrinkles up while you're talking, it might be time to change the subject.
Probably a good idea. What's really fascinating is that the nose can even signal social status.
Really? How so?
Well, in some cultures, holding the nose high, especially when looking at someone,
Okay.
can be a sign of arrogance or disdain,
Interesting.
reflecting a sense of superiority.
So it's like a nonverbal way of saying, I'm better than you.
Precisely. And conversely, a lowered nose can signal submission or insecurity.
I'm starting to realize just how much I've been missing in my everyday interactions. I need to start paying more attention.
It really is like gaining a whole new perspective on human behavior, isn't it?
Absolutely.
Mhm.
Now, the book also delves into the tricky topic of detecting deception.
Yes.
I have to admit, I'm a bit skeptical. Can we really tell if someone's lying just by observing their body language?
That's a great question, and one that a lot of people have. The book addresses this head-on, debunking those common myths about lie detection.
Okay.
There's no single Pinocchio tell that guarantees someone is being dishonest.
So no magic lying eye or telltale twitch that gives it all away?
I wish it were that simple. In fact, focusing too much on those supposed lying tells can actually mislead us.
So what's a more reliable approach?
The book introduces the concept of comfort-discomfort, which I find really helpful.
Okay.
It's based on the idea that when we're comfortable, we tend to be more truthful and expressive.
That makes sense.
Yeah.
When you're relaxed and at ease,
Yeah.
you're not trying to hide anything?
Exactly. But when we're lying or concealing something, we become uncomfortable,
Right.
and our bodies betray us.
So we should look for those subtle signs of discomfort
Yes,
or a mismatch between what they're saying and how their body is reacting.
precisely. It's about observing clusters of behaviors, deviations from their baseline,
Right.
and inconsistencies between their words, their tone of voice, and their body language.
So it's like being a detective, piecing together the evidence before reaching a verdict.
Exactly.
Yeah.
You need to consider the context, the individual's baseline behavior,
Right.
and look for subtle cues of discomfort or incongruence.
Okay, so there's no magic formula for spotting a liar. But are there any specific patterns or red flags we should be on the lookout for?
The book highlights two key things to pay attention to: synchrony and emphasis. So synchrony is all about alignment. When someone is being truthful, their words, their tone of voice, their facial expressions, and their body language all tend to be in sync. There's this natural flow and consistency to their communication.
So if someone's telling me a story and their words say one thing, but their body language is like screaming something else, that's a red flag.
Exactly. That lack of synchrony, or what the book calls asynchrony, can be a sign that something's not quite right. It's like their body is betraying their words.
Got it. So it's about looking for those moments where the pieces don't fit together.
Right.
Like maybe sort of, oh, I'm so happy, but their face is like tight and their shoulders are hunched.
Precisely. And synchrony goes beyond just words and body language. It also involves consistency with the details of their story, their timeline, and any other available information.
So if their story keeps changing or doesn't add up with the facts, that's another potential sign of deception.
Absolutely. Now, the second pattern to watch for is emphasis. When people are genuinely communicating,
Okay.
their words tend to be more emphatic. They'll use their hands, their facial expressions, and their tone of voice to really drive their points home.
It's like they're fully invested in what they're saying.
Yes.
Their whole body is engaged.
Exactly. They're not holding back. But when someone's being deceptive, their communication often lacks that emphasis.
Interesting.
Their body language might be more subdued, their tone monotone,
Right.
their gestures minimal. It's almost like they're trying to distance themselves from their own words.
So it's about looking for those moments where the energy or the conviction just isn't there.
Precisely. And again, it's not a foolproof sign,
Right.
but a lack of emphasis, especially when combined with other signs of discomfort or asynchrony, can be a valuable clue.
This is all so helpful.
Uh,
But I have to admit, all this talk about deception is making me a little paranoid. Are we supposed to be like constantly analyzing everyone we meet, looking for signs of lying?
Not at all. It's important to remember that most people are honest most of the time.
Right.
This information isn't about becoming hyper-suspicious or accusing everyone of lying.
So it's more about being aware and using this knowledge to improve our understanding of human behavior.
Exactly. It's about becoming a better observer, recognizing those subtle cues, and using them to build stronger relationships, navigate challenging situations, and ultimately connect with others on a deeper level.
I love that. It's like learning a secret language that allows us to connect with each other in a whole new way.
Precisely. And remember, the more we understand about how our own bodies communicate, the better we can control the messages we're sending to the world. It's about self-awareness as much as it is about understanding others.
That's a great point.
Hmm.
I think a lot of times we get so caught up in trying to read other people that we forget we're also sending out signals
Exactly.
all the time.
It's a two-way street.
Yes. So before we wrap up, is there anything else from the book, What Everybody is Saying, that you think our listeners should really take away from this deep dive?
Well, I think the most important takeaway is that nonverbal communication is a powerful tool. But it's not about becoming a human lie detector or manipulating others. It's about understanding ourselves and the people around us better. It's about building trust, creating genuine connections, and navigating our social world with more awareness and empathy.
That's beautifully said. I think that's a perfect note to end on. So to all our listeners out there, we encourage you to keep exploring this fascinating world of nonverbal communication. Pay attention to the subtle cues, observe the people around you, and most importantly, trust your gut instincts.
And remember, practice makes perfect. The more you observe, the more you'll learn, and the more confident you'll become in reading and understanding the silent language of the body.
This has been such an insightful deep dive into what everybody is saying. We've learned so much about the power of nonverbal communication, from the limbic brain to the 3 Fs to the subtle cues that can reveal so much about our thoughts, feelings, and intentions.
We hope you've enjoyed the journey as much as we have. And until next time, happy observing.